It's the nuclear option few thought they would actually take. Facebook blowing up our feeds, leaving a wasteland of empty news pages behind.
Facebook had warned actually at the end of last year that it might take this option, remove the ability for Australians to share or view news links, and it looks like they did it.
The social media giant pulled the trigger after new laws forcing it to pay for news content were voted through the House of Reps last night. Caught in the crossfire, non-news pages including satirical news, sporting bodies, health services, small and big business, politicians, its own page and well-connected mothers groups.
I've spoken this morning to the operator of North Shore Mums. Her Facebook page has been blocked and that is of significant concern.
Even more concerning and deserving of our Communication Minister's time, charities like 1800-RESPECT and government pages including emergency and health services all vanished.
When we're in a pandemic like the coronavirus pandemic, the removal of health pages on Facebook is particularly problematic because they were main ways that, governments were communicating with the population in their area about, restrictions, cases and all of that kind of stuff.
As the day went on, Facebook did indicate that some of those removals would be reversed. It did try to use excuses, however, that the legislation as it was written was pretty broad in what could be news.
But it's what's escaped the ban that's perhaps most worrying of all.
The fact that you wouldn't be able to get a good quality article from, say, the Sydney Morning Herald or the ABC about the vaccine drive, but you would be able to see an anti-vaccine meme. That does seem to be a problem.
With fears Facebook could become a vacuum of misinformation.
Conspiracy theorists or people that just don't have the right information about what's going on in their particular area will be able to put those views out onto the internet and there'll be no factual, accurate information to counterbalance that.
So with the disappearance of credible news information and
North Shore Mums,
will users stick around for conspiracies and crazy cat vids? Or has Facebook shot itself in the foot? Stephen Shearer is formerly the Facebook CEO of Australia and New Zealand and joins us now. Stephen, they warned us. Are you surprised they pulled the trigger?
I'm not really surprised. I'm more disappointed, to be honest with you. I hoped it wouldn't come to this because I think this is we all lose here. I think Facebook loses, Australians lose, and the Australian government loses. So I'm hoping that this can still be resolved. But yeah, I woke up this morning, my phone literally blew up when I saw what was going on. So yeah, I'm surprised and disappointed.
Well, I hope it didn't literally blow up. That sounds nasty.
Well, it almost did. I'm actually, as you can see, I'm actually in Queensland. I'm going around the Whitsundays and spending time with my family. And so I wasn't checking my phone. And I woke up and I went, oh, my gosh, what's going on in the world today? But Facebook never fails to surprise me these days, that's for sure.
Well, obviously, this is Facebook flexing its muscle. How long do you think that it will last? Is this forever?
Well, when you think this through, right, you say, well, Facebook has said that we're not going to agree to Australia's proposed arbitration mechanism because we see it as unfair and too draconian. Well, if they were to turn around tomorrow and agree to it, that puts the lie to their objection. So they can't do that. So in that sense, they're stuck in their position. But the government is quite stuck in its position where it's saying, no, this is the legislation, the regulation we've come up with. It's going through Parliament as we speak. Facebook has kind of jumped the gun by pulling news even before the law has come into force. So you could say that's a bullying or intimidation tactic. But you can see it can be quite hard for either party to back away from this while still saving face.
But we also saw dozens of non-news websites caught up in the ban today. Was that a mistake? Was it intentional? And how does that happen?
Let's put it this way. If it was a mistake, that's a bad thing. That's a really bad thing. That shows that Facebook was willing to basically do something that was reckless, that didn't matter who else was going to be damaged. We're going to do this just for our own financial benefit. If it was intentional, that's an even worse thing, because then that doubly shows that Facebook doesn't care. So I don't think either answer is a good answer. They're both bad answers. And so why it happened is in a way irrelevant, but the fact that it did happen is really bad. And I think we should all, as Australians, be concerned about that.
A lot of people reckon they're ditching Facebook over this. Now, people threaten to quit social media all the time, but could they actually follow through this time?
Look, social media, we all depend on Facebook. We depend on Google. I think asking people to give up these platforms is in a way very unfair unto itself, because they have done such a good job of building themselves into our society. And so many of us use it. Millions of us use them every day. But that shows all the more why there's responsibility on the other side. If you have millions of people relying on you every day, you don't just flick that off overnight, even if you think that that's a a bargaining chip you can play in a negotiation to try to save a few $1 million. I just think that's irresponsible, and I'm really disappointed that Facebook took this move.
So the government's arguing that all this will do is discredit Facebook as a news source, so that the effect is users will know that nothing on there is credible, and it will just become a big hub of misinformation. Do you think the government's right?
I think you have to look at it in two ways. One is from the user perspective. So, having you can't find your favorite news from your favorite outlets in Facebook. That's not going to completely change your world. But what the bigger problem is what happens in aggregate when everybody is like that. So everybody's not getting news from relatively reputable sources within Australia, and instead they're getting news that's coming from places that's unreliable, that's not as accurate, or they're not getting news at all. They're not actually being shared any news that's coming from Australia about Australian issues and things that form how we build ourselves as a society and run ourselves as a democracy. And that's the bigger issue. It's not what's in your newsfeed today. It's what's in all of our news feeds over the next weeks and months. And that has a corrosive effect on our democracy. And that's the big problem.
A lot to think about there, Stephen. Thank you very much for speaking to us.
Great. Good to talk to you. Take care.
From expert opinions to in-depth analysis and reporting, the Project YouTube brings you the biggest stories from Australia and around the globe. Hit the subscribe button now for news delivered straight to your feed.